Hola, mis penditos. Peter von Panda here. Wanted to tell you a little bit about my Fiat 500, and I've had it for exactly 2 years now. I haven't put as many miles as most people will drive, but I wanted to show you kind of a list of the things that I've come to learn about the Fiat 500 over the past couple of years. And overall, I really love the car. I actually bought this 500 as I was looking at the Smart car and the Mini Cooper. Unfortunately, the Scion IQ was not available at that time, nor was the Chevy Spark, which was actually kind of a more recent addition. And this car has not been washed. It's you're seeing it in the raw. I want to show you to you in all its glory as a car that's used on a daily basis. But a few things that I'll point out is that, one, if you do get a Fiat 500, one of the things that none of the reviews tell you is that you are going to become an inadvertent ambassador for Fiat. Everyone and their mother is going to ask you about this car on a regular basis, even though this Fiat 500 has been out for a couple years now. Even this past week, I answered questions from someone at a gas station. The girl at the car wash said she liked it, and the guy at the Burger King drive-thru asked me a barrage of questions while I was waiting for my food. So that is just going to happen with this car, and it's going to happen more so as I think Fiat's increase in popularity. For instance, a gentleman was actually asking me about the Fiat 500L, which I have never driven, know nothing about, but he thought I was some sort of authority on it. So, obviously, I got mine in the Grigio here. It's the Pop. One of the things that I wasn't a big fan of is these base wheels, which are just steel wheels with the hubcaps. I certainly would have liked the alloy wheels that come on the Sport and the higher end models, but didn't come with it in this car. And I've also noticed, as I've been watching the Mopar Parts and Accessories website, they have they have some wheels from the manufacturer that looked cool, and I was actually thinking about getting, but I've never seen any of the Fiat 500 studios actually have them either in stock or have them really available to them. They've always had them in the catalog, but no one's ever. I've even inquired about them at the parts counter when I've taken this car in for service, and they don't seem to be very enthusiastic about even trying to get them. So, TireRack.com and a few other places have wheels that fit. It's kind of a strange bolt pattern. It's 4 by 98 millimeters, so not a lot of the standard wheels fit. So you have to kind of look for that, but I would plan to replace these wheels eventually. One of the things I want to show you here is that I've found out is that the front end of this car is very vertical. It's kind of a big flat front end, and as you're driving, it produces, I think, a good deal of wind resistance and a pretty significant surface area for bugs and rocks and things to collide with it. And you probably can't see it here, but I've actually even touched up parts of the paint with road chip that have road chips and stones a number of times. So kind of all over this front end. Even though I only have about 13,000 miles on this car, I've gotten a bunch of chips, and so I had to go and get a little bit of the gray paint and do a lot of touch-ups. Even up here on this front edge of the hood, it's pretty flat, and I've noticed that I've gotten some stone chips there as well. I think that also affects mileage, and recently I actually just drove this car cross country. I was a little worried about it because you get a little bit of road noise, and it's not the smoothest ride with the short wheelbase. It kind of jostles forward and back over bumps a little bit, but it was no problem. The car handled great. Even hit some of the mountain area through West Virginia, and had no problems pulling up the hill. So I was really excited about that. The engine does rev a little bit and makes a little noise, a little more than the other cars, or at least it seems like that as the driver, because the cabin really kind of receives a lot of that engine noise inside. It doesn't have quite as much sound dampening as other cars, so you kind of hear that a little bit. But it did really well, and I actually feel much more connected and confident in this car after doing that road trip than I did beforehand. But one of the things that I did order, and I would actually probably recommend you do this early, is one of those standard black vinyl front bras. I'm going to be driving a lot more, and especially here in the winter in the Midwest, you get a lot of salt on the roads and things like that, which will continue to beat up on that front end. So I just got one of the front end bras. They're about $100. It's a two-piece. One goes over the front bumper here, and then there's a short piece that covers kind of the front third of the hood here. I don't have it on there yet. Some of the other alternatives are like the XPEL, or that clear vinyl material, which doesn't hide the paint in the front end, but it's also much more expensive. Those are going to be around the $300 mark to have them installed, and you're going to have to do that have someone do that professionally, because they seem to be kind of a more art than science affair of wetting the surface and heat shrinking some of the around the contours, etc., etc. So just keep that in mind, that this car is kind of a magnet for road trips, and the other road chips. The car is a magnet for road trips. And again, like I said, just because of kind of this big flat front end, I didn't get quite as good a mileage as I think other cars. Obviously it doesn't get as good as the hybrids, but I will say that over my cross-country trips on the highway portions, I did just barely average over 40 miles to the gallon. So I actually did a little bit better than the posted EPA sticker of like 36 highway. Now I will say that most of the time I was doing about 65 to about 70 in the parts when you could really open her up in over 70 miles an hour, or even cruise at around 80. That does drop her pretty precipitously to actually the low 30s. I want to jump in here. Actually, I want to show you one other thing here on the side. I've been careful to park away from other cars in parking lots and whatnot, but at some point I have a small garage. I must have been lowering something and actually accidentally hit the car, or lowered something onto it, or I don't know if this is a low enough point on the A-pillar here that you can just see that there is a ding on it. And this actually may have been from someone else in a parking lot, or even the right type of car door. I don't know at the right angle, but the problem is there on this A-pillar, there's no way to get behind it, so you can't really do a dentless paint repair. And I don't know if you can see that ding right there, but it just annoys me a little bit. If it were on the door, you could actually kind of pop it out, have someone massage it out for 50, 60 bucks, but on there it's kind of permanent. So that's a little bit frustrating, but not a big deal. Let me go ahead and jump in the car here now. And first thing I'll tell you is I've done a number of things to make my car more livable on a day-to-day basis, or on a commuting basis. One of the things, I've added the CD slot mount here. Just fits into the CD tray, which I never use. Who has CDs anymore? Bust out the Fine Young Cannibals or the NKOTB. But this holds my smartphone, so I can put it right in there, and that's great. It puts it kind of in view without blocking the radio head unit. And down here I have added a retractable, it's actually a micro USB cable with a lightning adapter on the end. So this fits my iPhone, and so I can extend it up here, plug it into my phone, give it power from the cigarette lighter here, and then there's a button right on the side of this retractable cable which winds it back in. So that's pretty nice. And then over on the other side here, I actually used on the door handle to pull the door shut on the driver's side. You grab this quite a bit to close the door and whatnot. But one of the criticisms I have here is that this plastic that they use to do this whole piece is pretty soft or something, because you can see here that there are some pretty big gouges where the fingernail or whatever, your wedding ring or whatever you might have on your hand digs into this plastic. Now, it's all right that it happens, and it's not a very prominent piece, but I'm just a little surprised that in this car that the plastic is maybe, of all the places to use a really hard plastic, real durable plastic, this would be it. And it's a much, softer type of plastic that shows wear quite a bit. The other thing is on, the Pop model at least, that does not have a leather interior, it uses that same sort of fabric on the door that you use on the seats. And the fabric, actually, I like a lot. It doesn't come across as quite as cheap as in some of the other real Econo boxes, so it's pretty nice. But on this darker color, it tends to show its wear just a little bit more on these these door panels then on the seats itself, maybe because your skin is rubbing on it, or it's catching sun, or your arm is often sitting on here when you're driving, and it just takes a lot of kind of movement. Whereas when you're sitting on the seat, you're not actually physically creating friction with it as much. But this piece right here is showing just a little bit more wear than I would have liked. On the logo on the door, or on the steering wheel here, it's really cool because it's got this nice big piece. It's very retro, and especially if you get kind of the interiors that have that cream or white leather, it really stands out and looks very Italian. But one of the things that I'll say about this is it's a kind of a pressed piece of aluminum or some kind of very light thin metal. And at some point, and this is my own fault, I must have lifted something, as there's no back seat, maybe my briefcase across my seat, and I grazed it. And so you can see right here on the eye, I have dinged this logo pretty well. And so not a lot of force is required to kind of deform this piece. I don't know if this is replaceable, but it certainly for this is not worth the time or the effort. But you can see right there that there's enough indentation as I run my fingernail across it. I can just stick it in there and get it stuck. So that's a little frustrating because that's something that's right in your face all the time, and you like it to look pristine. And actually they make, if you look online, they make some vinyl stickers, some of those removable adhesive pieces that can go over this to kind of keep this in really pristine condition from scratches and whatnot. But obviously it's not going to protect you from being a buffoon like me and actually jamming it with something. So that's a little frustrating too. And then the last thing I want to call out here is the microphone, just like in many cars that have the hands-free Bluetooth, is up here. I believe it's this piece, this little speaker grill, right between the reading lights and the map lights. And that's connected, obviously, to the Blue and Me hands-free system. And so if you've paired your phone with this system, it's actually really nice because I believe all the Cinquecentos now come with hands-free Bluetooth. And it's very useful. The only thing I would say is that you can see some of the criticisms on the board is that the quality of it, the sound quality coming through that you're listening to isn't bad, but on the receiving end, the people you're talking to on the phone clearly know you're speaking on some sort of hands-free device. And the reason I bring that up is that I'm not sure if it's that there isn't a lot of sound dampening inside of this car, or if it's just the fact that the microphone isn't great or the software isn't great. But I mean, I get a lot of people asking me if I'm on the train, if I'm driving in a convertible. I mean, it's pretty noticeable to the point where people will throw it into the conversation. In contrast, GM on almost all their cars, down from the Sonic to the Chevy Spark and the Cruze, which I also have, has seemed to really nail the microphone or the noise cancellation. And in fact, when I've asked people when I'm speaking on hands-free in the Cruze if they can tell I'm on a speakerphone, they can't even tell that I'm using any type of accessory with the cell phone. They think I'm speaking right into the phone. So in terms of you commuting and wanting to make calls and sounding crystal clear and professional or even hidden from people, the Fiat 500 is not going to pass muster to disguise that. You know, obviously the cars with, higher-end cars that are quieter with Bluetooth hands-free seem to do a lot better job. Even, like I said, the very, very base Chevrolets seem to have really nailed that. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the last thing that I would have liked to have changed, and you can see a video review of some products that I use to activate the Siri button to do voice control on the iPhone while I'm in the car, because this button, the voice recognition button here, is for the Blue and Me system, just accesses the onboard logic. Okay, so if I say call Jack von Panda, it's going to kind of search the contacts that it's copied over to the Fiat. And that voice recognition is pretty poor. In fact, a lot of times it'll either ask me to say the name again, like it didn't hear anything, at which point I am literally shouting at the top of my voice, literally, call Jack von Panda, and it'll say, repeat again because it didn't hear anything. So for some reason the microphone doesn't pick up anything. I would much rather that this button actually just access the phone's voice command system, whether it's an Android or an iPhone. But then the other problem is, even when I access Siri and then it connects, which is great, connects to the microphone here, there's so much background noise or competitive noise on that transmission that even Siri gets gets the instruction wrong, or even the voice dictation really is off the mark. If a human is listening on the other end of the phone call, they're going to be fine at understanding. But I think it's just kind of those those minute interruptions are really, really poor for a technology solution. So it would be nice in future models to just get rid of that and make it like a Siri Eyes Free or the voice recognition or activation program directly on your smartphone. The cruise control, used that a lot on my road trip here. I'm thankful I had it, but one of the things that I would say is that when you're on cruise control, normally if it's set and you're cruising along, say at 60 miles an hour, and you hit the set button, it's going to drop you down a few miles an hour, and if you hit the resume, it's going to raise that cruise control limit by a few miles an hour. One of the things that I would say here is that this seems the reduction of the speed does not seem to do very much, whereas the resume, the acceleration, the adding of the speed in a cruise control seems to do a whole heck of a lot. So one of the things I noticed is if I'm cruising at 60 and I hit set, I actually would have to kind of tap it a few times to get it down to maybe a 57 or 58 miles an hour cruising speed. Whereas if I was at 60 miles an hour and I hit resume, it would shoot me right up to 63 immediately if I did it again, 65. And so the resume seems to be a lot more, it seems to be biased a lot more to resume than set. And in fact, sometimes I would just hit cancel, let the speed fall to where I wanted it to go, and then hit set again. And then I even noticed that there's a little bit of a lag. So if it's sweeping down from 60 and I want to get to 55, I really kind of need to hit set around 58 to get it to set at a 55 mile per hour speed limit. So the cruise is a little bit wonky. It still works quite well. And then the last thing, maybe I already said the last thing, but I'm going to throw this out because I forgot about it, is that the clock on this Fiat is slow. And so, or is not slow in and of itself, but it just ends up running slow. In my best estimation of how slow it becomes, right now it says 5 p.m. and I can tell you on my smartphone it says 5:04, and so the smartphone is really kind of my benchmark because it's always getting an updated time, and I would say I adjust the time fast or advance it about 10 minutes every couple of months because it starts falling slow. So my best guess is that this clock ends up being about 4 minutes slow per month. And so what you really need to do is when you reset the clock, if it's 5:05 right now, you want to advance it to 5:10 even, because in a couple months it'll be right on time, and after that it'll be a few minutes slow and you're going to be changing it again. So I'm not sure exactly why the clock itself falls behind so much, but for some reason whatever they're using as kind of the quartz movement or whatever they're using to set that time needs to be recalibrated at some point. Would be my suggestion to Fiat. So overall, everything else works great. I really love the car. Like I said, these are maybe a bit nitpicky, but I just wanted to call out the things that I've really the quirks I've learned to live with and even love a little bit over the past couple years with this Fiat 500. Again, I haven't, I've been a little tempted. I've seen the Scion IQs on the road and a lot of the Chevy Sparks lately. Again, I don't think the Chevy Spark has as much personality, or especially inside the car, where the Cinquecento has a lot of that Italian vintage retro flair. But I really would like to try out those cars and just see how they compare to the 500. But overall, love it. Great buy, and I would definitely do it again. So a lot of value for the money. That's Peter von Panda checking out his Fiat 500 with you and giving you my opinions on some of the quirks and niggles that I found over the last couple of years.